Disclaimer! The following episode contains spoilers for Doctor Who, Twice Upon a Time. Don't go crying to your mum if we spoil it for you. You've been warned! Welcome to PodCapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. And this week, we say goodbye to 12 as the clock strikes 13. Bum-ba-dum, 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 woo-woo! Cue the music! Hello there, Capers, and welcome to PodCapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. My name is Scott James Merridew, and this is the show where we talk about various geek and nerd-related topics, and I'm joined each week by a very special different guest. Now, this week I am joined by Rob Wallis. Remember him from our Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 review. Rob, say hello.
Hello.
So how you been since GG Vol 2?
Very well. Blimey, what's been on since then? Spider-Man: Homecoming? Was that post? That was post.
That was post.
That was post Volume 2. Really liked Spider-Man: Homecoming. Not a big fan of Thor: Ragnarok, to be honest. In fact,
am I the only one?
I've got the very controversial opinion that actually, given what I think it succeeded in doing under less than ideal circumstances, I preferred Justice League.
You take that back. You take that back. You take that back this fucking second.
Ooh, yeah, I know. What is
with the Justice League apologists? First David, now you. It was shit, and we know it.
Okay, well, this is my analogy that I have for it. Marvel is let's say you're a teacher,
okay.
And Marvel's that kid at school who has a great home life, really supportive parents, has everything going for him. So when they turn the film that's like a C, you feel a bit disappointed because it's like you are coasting. We know that you are capable of doing better than this. Whereas DC is a kid with a completely toxic home life. He's got adult role models cycling in and out of his life.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that he turns anything in at all is something of a miracle. So when he does something that actually is deeply, deeply flawed on a fundamental level, but at least makes an attempt to not just be relentlessly angsty and emo, you kind of have to go, okay, kid, you know what? It's not.
By anyone else's standards, it's terrible, but by your standards, it's actually rather good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but I refuse to listen to sense, and I think it's awful. Moving on. Nah, it's fine. So, Doctor Who. Before we go any further, let's just talk about our respective relationships with Doctor Who. When did you first come into contact with the man in the big blue box?
I would have been probably somewhere around 13, 14. Before the new series came back. Essentially, my mum and dad had talked about it, Daleks, hiding behind the sofa from the Daleks, and I thought, yeah, you know what, I'm a sci-fi I was an emerging sci-fi fan, so I thought, I owe it to check this out, and I was lucky enough that they used to do a full story, so anywhere between 3 and 6 episodes of the 20-minute episodes of Classic Who on UK TV Gold every Saturday and Sunday morning.
Oh, right.
So I used to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and go and watch one, and I was lucky enough that when I jumped in, it wasn't Hartnell era, but it was early enough in the run that essentially I got to watch Doctor Who a pretty much unbroken run all the way through to the end of Sylvester McCoy.
Wow, that is an achievement.
Yes, over a few years, and between that and going back and filling in the gaps, I think I've watched maybe not quite as much Who as you're able to watch, given I know they've probably uncovered some episodes since then in an
there
attic.
There are still some episodes that are lost,
and they find them in places we found 5 episodes in an attic in Sierra Leone. And it's great. I don't know. I'm sure not to be dismissive of Doctor Who, the story of how they got there is possibly more interesting than the content itself. But in any case, yeah. So when they brought it back, I was kind of in the perfect position to go, yes, this is something I love, and something that I was just able to jump straight in with, well, as everybody was, because it was Doctor Who, it was New Who for a new generation.
Well, that's the thing, you see, because before, when I was about 13, 14 as well, in 2005, when New Who came along, and I had no experience with Doctor Who. I think my dad might have talked about it once or twice, and I'd seen, like, an image of a Dalek and a big blue box and a yellow car, and I thought, and that was my only context for Doctor Who. I didn't know anything about it. So I went into New Who, well, new. I didn't know anything about what Time Lords or TARDISes or what it was all about, and I had to learn with it, as I'm sure many people did with New Who, and that was my experience. And since then, I have gone back to classic Who, and I haven't watched a heck of a lot of stuff. I've seen some of the 6th Doctor serials and the 4th and the 5th.
Ooh, okay. Jumping in with the 6th Doctor, it's a bold move.
Well, it was purely accidental. I was flicking through channels, I found it, and I thought, okay, this is the guy. And I think it was one of the Cybermen serials they did, which, you know, when I was watching, I remember, I kind of liked.
No, I'd say the Cybermen episode of the 6th Doctor, my geek credentials are letting me down because the name of it has suddenly escaped from my head. It's not Nightmare in Silver because that's obviously the new series one. It will come back to me. But yeah, that's one of the actual, I'd say, one of the better Colin Baker episodes, and that it got some of the Cybermen body horror in there that we hadn't really had before.
Yeah, I remember that. It was it was pretty cool, and though couldn't really distract from the horrendous Technicolor Dreamcoat he was wearing. Ugh.
I've got some affection for that because it was so clearly a choice that is like, we've made a choice and we are sticking with it. And
sunk cost fallacy.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, you know, the fact that this, you know, is going to blow out everyone's TV screens every week, blow out the contrast when he turns up. It's like, can't see the Doctor, there's just a haze of colour.
Yeah. If he moves too quickly, he'll give someone an epileptic fit, you know? Yeah. And so, what I think is, I never really got over the 9th Doctor. For me, I think he's still my favourite Doctor. Even though I love 10, and I liked 11, and I even liked 12, and I'm sure I like 13, and 9 always stick out for me, because he was my first, you know, you never forget your first. So what about you? Who's your favourite Doctor, if you have one?
That's the thing. I'm going to take the coward's answer and say that I kind of love all of them.
They were all the same character, technically. So,
yeah, I mean, and that's one thing I love about the show. You know, the show, you take this character who, you know, whatever the exact details of his personality are, is the smartest, funniest, bravest, most decent guy. You know, not guy or gal, the most decent being in person.
He's even better.
Being in existence, and you know, you give them a companion, a sort of, you know, somebody, you know, and that's one thing I thought the new series got really put down really well.
Stick an Australian air stewardess in with them, you're fine.
Yeah, and an air stewardess, or somebody who, you know, is serving chips at the university, but all of a sudden, you know, is exposed to the whole of time and space, and you know, can learn from them.
Bill,
and
right.
You know, and you can do comedy, you can do tragedy, you can do horror, and as long as it's reasonably child friendly. You know, and set it anywhere, you know, in time and space. And as long as it is reasonably family friendly, you know, it's a show of basically limitless possibility.
Yeah, I mean, ever since the first Regeneration, the second Doctor came along, the show has been about reinvention and trying new ideas, and not all of them have worked, Technicolor Dreamcoat, but some of them do, and what I like about it is this thing of experimentation, and even New Who itself was a bit of an experiment. Can we bring this back? Can we modernise this reasonably old thing for a modern audience? Because they tried that once before with the 8th Doctor, and look how well that turned out. Well, I mean, which is nothing to not say that I dislike Paul McGann. Like Paul McGann, not so sure about him being half human. I don't get what that's about, but he himself good. It was just that you tried to Americanise the Doctor, and that didn't go so well, did it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yes, that film version is so deeply compromised by its need to have, well, it's you know, by having a budget and something like, oh yeah, as you say, we need to Americanize this. We need to make this. And it's like, actually, it turns out that at least now the Americans just quite like Doctor Who for what it is.
Yeah, funny that.
You know, it's almost like he's quite a relatable figure that you don't need to make half human, and that somehow. And you know what? One of the things I loved, one of my favourite bits in New Who is Night of the Doctor. is the mini-sode where they bring back McGann, because it is the best type of fan service, and just the moment of, hello, I'm the Doctor. Just maybe not the one you're looking for. Maybe not the one that you expected. It's like, oh my god, that's a deep cut.
Because he did all those Big Finish audio dramas and stuff. I haven't listened to any of them, but he continued the role. He didn't just do one thing and then went away.
If you take the Big Finish audio dramas, he's probably had almost more time as the Doctor than anyone else.
And he mentioned all the companions he supposedly had on those audio dramas.
Yeah, Charlie and Chris and all of those. Yeah, and Cannibal essentially canonized them, though. You can't really canonize the 8 Doctor audio dramas because they don't really. There are a couple of different strands of possible canon within the 8 Doctor audio dramas. They're pretty muddied.
Well, that's what happens when you travel through time and space, you know.
Exactly. The fact that it's anything resembling coherent is something, again, is pretty impressive at this point.
Yeah. And speaking of specials, I think it's time to talk about Twice Upon a Time. Now, I was looking forward to this for a number of reasons. A, because it was going to be the Regeneration episode. We're going to see the 13th Doctor, but also because we were going to see Bill again. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but I fucking love Bill. I swear, she's my favourite companion since Donna Noble. I like Amy Pond. I think she's great, but for me, it goes Donna Noble, Bill Potts, Amy Pond, and that's the big 3.
Well, that's the thing, because I think one of the things about all those characters have is that they challenge the Doctor, as in, and in just in like, they're not gonna. There is no reverence in that, or very. Actually, that's not true. Bill has a touch of reverence, but they ask the questions that you actually want the companions to ask, and they don't get the Doctor get away with stuff. They don't let him get too.
They don't get him too full of himself. They don't let him get too detached from humanity, but also they themselves are very flawed. They are not perfect. They are not necessarily the brightest or the strongest or the quickest, but you know what? They have other attributes that make them so amazing, and it's when you try and create a character that's just as awesome as the Doctor in that sort of way, that's when you get Clara. Oh, Clara!
I think one of my major issues, Clara was created, at least to start with, as a mystery. She was the mystery girl.
A fairly interesting mystery.
Yeah, but the issue is, I think after they'd revealed who Clara was, they suddenly realised that she didn't really have a character, and it's at the start of the season after that where all of a sudden they decide she's bossy.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Clara, you're so bossy. It's like, is she though? That was never a defining character trait for her before now. And it feels like you've just gone, well, we've ticked off the mystery trait. We need to add something in its place. Bossy? Yeah, all right. Let's just write that. And I thought that she had an interesting, I think she had the basis of an interesting arc. You know, companion tries to become the Doctor, or companion, and is ultimately, well, doesn't ultimately die, but dies. At least in
she suffers severe consequences from trying to man's reach exceeding his grasp in a certain way.
Exactly, and again, talking about arcs, I think Twice Upon a Time and the most recent season of Doctor Who, I found it both rewarding and frustrating in terms of how it tried to give Capaldi a natural arc starting from the point Matt Smith regenerated into Capaldi, but one that I'm not convinced was always intended from the start.
Because I mean, that's the thing, see, because with David Tennant, by the end of his regeneration, it made it clear that they were building up a very subtle thematic element of, oh, he's so amazing, he's so brilliant, but he needs to have limits, because if he doesn't, he could do some very bad stuff. And I didn't know if they planned that from the start. Maybe not, I don't know, but they wove this thematic element through his tenure that it seemed like they had planned it from the start. Here, I mean, okay, so what do you think of Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor in Totem?
I think his performance has been tremendous. I mean, he has what is potentially, for me, the best single episode of New Who, which I think I always get the mixed up whether it's Hellbent or Heaven Sent, but the one set within the Confession Dial.
Oh God! Yeah.
Which is just a character study. It's a character study of the Doctor, most particularly his Doctor, and I think that's one that needed his Doctor. I don't think you could put the 10th Doctor in that situation and have it work in quite the same way. But the quality of the writing, I think, has just been hugely inconsistent. Starting from the first season, the first season of Capaldi's Doctor my issue is I'm not convinced they know who he is. I think that they lean into the whole "Am I a good man?" stuff because Stephen Moffat's Doctor.
You are a good Dalek.
Exactly. I mean, Stephen Moffat was always. I think the Doctor he wanted to write was always going to be Matt Smith. Matt Smith was always the Doctor with whom the 11th Doctor was always the character that he was going to be in tune with, the one that his natural rhythms kind of fit. So when Matt Smith left, I do think that Capaldi should have gone. I think that if I do think Moffat should have gone. If Moffat had gone when Matt Smith had gone, I think he stuck around too long. He stuck around long. How can I miss you if you won't leave?
Will you get out already?
And one thing, I kind of now hold to the idea that each showrunner gets a Doctor, unless your Doctor leaves after one season.
Yeah.
You get
Damn
one
you,
Doctor.
Eccleston, you beautiful bastard.
Exactly. It's just because chances are you are going to have a particular take on who you think the Doctor is, and any other iteration that you create after that is going to be pulling away from that.
Yeah. My problem with Moffat is that he's too much of a fanboy. I mean, he has made no secret of his love for Doctor Who, which is great, and it's probably why, because he has written for Doctor Who before he became showrunner. He's written several individual
standout episodes.
The what? Sorry.
Several standout episodes, in terms of recurring. He was kind of the golden
boy. The Idiot's
boy.
Lantern, Blink, I think, was one of his.
I don't think Idiot's Lantern was Idiot Lantern Moffat.
No, that was Gatiss. Sorry, we'll get to him in a second. But he had written several great standalone episodes. Then he became showrunner, and he's too in love with it. He was too in love with Matt Smith's Doctor and all that sort of thing. This is where we get the whole Doctor Who question, which I frankly don't give a fuck about, because we're never going to get the answer. We're never going to find out the Doctor's name, because instantly, when we find out, everyone's reaction will be, "Oh, okay."
There is no name that currently is set. Yeah, it's just not an interesting part of the character.
You can't keep a secret for 50 years and then expect any kind of major, long-lasting reaction.
Oh, you mean like it's almost like Moffat, setting up something that has to be the biggest reveal ever and then essentially letting people down?
Yeah, basically.
In terms of like, how did he survive the fall off the roof?
Fucking don't even get me. That's another rant for another day. Yeah, and I mean, I think there were elements of Matt Smith and Capaldi's tenure that were very good, and I honestly thought that once Clara left, Doctor Who started to get consistently good again. There were moments when it was good and Capaldi was great, but when Bill arrived, everything just sort of clicked into place. I think Clara worked better with Matt Smith's and just not so much with 12, and Bill just made everything work again. Bill made Doctor Who fun for me again. And I'm not saying that every episode she was in was great, but I just had a lot more fun.
Bill was a bespoke companion again. Bill was a companion who was actually designed for the 12th Doctor, instead of somebody that had to be retrofit. Because the thing is, back in the old days of Who, you could basically get away with putting almost any companion with almost any Doctor.
Because they were there.
Yeah, and because of the time a lot of the time it was quite broad. Dramatically speaking, it wouldn't suffer from it. But I think the new Doctor Who is a lot more finely tuned, especially you wouldn't be able to really do you probably wouldn't do a character study episode with one of the original Doctors, although Big Finish often does now. At least you wouldn't do it as they were originally written.
There were moments in classic Who where they had like individual moments. Like, I remember very clearly this one bit in one of the fourth Doctor stories where he's got like two wires and might touch them together and he can destroy the Daleks, and he's like, "But do I have the right? Do I have the
Genesis of the Daleks, the ideal, possibly the classic Dalek episode, and then there's great stuff with Peter Davison talking about, when the Cybermen, trying to convert them in Earthshock, and he's saying, well, to some people, small beautiful moments is what life is all about.
Yeah,
I
think that carries on. That's why so many people like Doctor Who, is because it's sci-fi weirdness and people with weird costumes with giant eyes, but it's also BUMs, bug-eyed monsters, BEMs.
BEMs. But yeah, as I think you're saying, there is a real humanity to it. You know, the episode Vincent and the Doctor.
Oh God. Oh, it's. I mean, this is why Richard Curtis is one of my favorite writers, even though he insists on putting Americans in everything he does. Although not this, just because there was such a warmth and humanity to it. And even an interesting look at depression and how that can affect some people. And even though it ends on a slightly bittersweet note, it ends on it's also a powerful note because, you know what? They added to his pile of good things. And also it had Bill Nye, which makes anything better.
I say Bill Nye, at one point would have been an interesting pick for the Doctor.
I often said that. Bill Nye, Tim Minchin, people like that.
But obviously now our new Doctor is Jodie Whittaker.
Yay!
Do we want to should we discuss the episode a bit more in detail before we kind of jump ahead?
Yeah, I think she's an ending of the episode sort of thing. So let's talk. So we can pick up where we left off with the Doctor surrounded by the snow, and there's another Doctor. Whoopsies! Now this is what's his name? David Bradley.
Yes.
Who played William Hartnell in the 2013 one-off special An Adventure in Time and Space, which, if you haven't seen, dear Capers, fucking stop this episode and go and watch it, because it is amazing. It's interesting, it's funny, and actually, you know what? Kind of heartfelt. It's an interesting look into the inception of Doctor Who and the journey of Verity Lambert and also William Hartnell in his role, and eventually having to give up that role. And David Bradley, he's probably best known as like Filch from Harry Potter. That's what I always knew him as. And then I see him in this,
and of course Game of Thrones now, Walder Frey and Game of Thrones.
Walder Frey, actually, yeah. And then you see him in this, and you immediately think, he's going to be some slimy, horrible bastard. And he's not. He's awesome, but
he's a bit unreconstructed.
Unreconstructed.
Sorry, the first Doctor, in terms of he's very much the '60s first Doctor.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they haven't made him. They haven't. I'm trying to think of the term for it. They haven't politically corrected him.
Yeah, which was a brave choice for him. But a great thing about David Bradley is, I think he's such a good actor now, getting that sort of recognition, is that he could play William Hartnell just as good as he could play the First Doctor, which made him an ideal choice for him in this.
Yeah, and I think he's the second Doctor. Sorry, he's the third actor to play the First Doctor on screen.
Will Hartnell, and they got another guy. Was it for the 5 Doctors?
Richard Hurndall.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll loop back around. I think one of my issues with this episode is I don't necessarily think his pairing with Capaldi is that rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and there's some good bits. There's something missing. Something missing that we got maybe with the Time of the Doctor. Was it the Time of the Doctor? Yeah, the name of the 50th special with Smith and Tennant and Hurt. That just wasn't there. I mean, it's such an interesting idea. The First Doctor coming up with the latest Doctor, 12. You know, there's such a distance between them, and they're the same person.
They're both refusing to regenerate. I think, I wanted an extra scene where they both really went into, especially with, where they went into the rationale behind, and I know that you get a couple of lines from the First Doctor being like, well, I'm afraid.
Afraid. Okay, why are you afraid? I'm not going to say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost like it might have, and a lot of the stuff between the First Doctor and him being patronising to Bill Potts, it's almost like it might have been more interesting if he'd been paired with, I don't know, maybe a female Doctor. But who could imagine such a thing?
That could, surely that's the crazy delusions of a mind high on ketamine or something.
Yeah.
What's next? James Bond. That's a quote from something else. Jane Bond. But anyway, I know it's so stupid. It's so stupid. We're gonna talk about that at the end. But
yes. So the sheer number of Partridge-worthy quotes that have appeared in various.
Oh God, morons aplenty. But so we find them both in this. So they're both refusing to undergo regeneration, And then stuff sort of kicks off with Mark Gatiss turning up. Has he ever played a character in Doctor Who before?
Oh yeah, he's played several. His first episode he was in was one called he was Professor Lazarus in the Lazarus.
Yes, of course. Oh god.
And he plays what's the name of the? I'm trying to think what the episode. It's not A Good Man Goes to. It might be A Good Man Goes to War. He plays a big chinny guy who ends up getting eaten by all the skulls, who leads Matt Smith's Doctor down into the catacombs when he's looking for Dorian Manderville's head.
Possibly, I can't remember. Honestly, I can remember almost every episode of the 9th Doctor and the 10th Doctor. When we get to 11, I start to forget some things.
It does get a bit all wibbly wobbly timey wimey, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just because I watched.
Continuity heavy.
I think it's just because I've watched every episode of New Who so far, but some I've seen multiple times, and that's usually not the 11th and 12th Doctors. So it's just not so firmly ingrained in my mind. It's not necessarily an impact on its quality. Just on my brain. And so, and when they got the First World War captain, whose name they never actually go into detail, that's when I thought, okay, there's something important about this guy, and it's First World War. They're going to do something about the Christmas truce. As soon as I saw that,
it was incredibly. They couldn't not do it. Essentially,
I think they could have not done it, and I've got more to say about that later on. So we'll hold that, put a pin in that for now. Contain yourself, but I want to move because the three of them just sort of pop in together and they have a bit of a talk. We really hit the ground running on this one because immediately they're all taken in this large spaceship. I think one of the TARDISes is taken in the spaceship because there's 2 TARDISes now, and I like the fact that they kept the classic TARDIS. The slightly smaller
and there are a couple of lines about the windows being a different size.
Yeah, I like they played some homage to that and talked about that. But here's the thing I don't get. They're taken up into the spaceship using chains. They use metal chains to I mean, would a hover beam or an adducto beam or something like that be too weird?
That's the thing is, I would have, I thought that was quite cool. I'm actually, like, the idea of, like, a spaceship with just retro elements is fun, but they needed to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
They needed to kind of be like, oh, that's weird. Chains. Yeah, like...
No one thinks this is weird. They have a glass holographic robot people, this amazingly advanced technology, and they use chains. Like, that's not a bad idea, but you need to mention it.
It's like, yeah, exactly as you say, like, here is a repository containing the post-death consciousnesses of, like, the entire human race. Who knows, like, maybe every sentient being who is, which, it's almost like Stephen Moffat's used that idea before.
Oh God, yeah, that was
but they're essentially also that's being deployed alongside the type of technology a parking warden might use.
Oh God. Yeah. Oh it's dear. Yeah, but then we meet Bill Potts again, and I'm happy. Yay! And of course, we need to know, is she the real Bill? Because last time we saw her, she was being an awesome liquid space lesbian. That's another quote for something else, and I'll send you the link. But it's and so we naturally have questions, and the Doctor has questions. We're like thinking, is she an imposter? Is she the real Bill? And he asks these questions. He's not being a dummy, which I'm glad about. And they give us a little bit of hope that she might be real, but she's not, is she? She's not.
Well, she is and she isn't. But it does kind of suggest, though, that Bill, when she became awkward or awesome liquid space lesbian, did die. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing. That's the thing that I don't like about the last episode before this was that was so ambiguous, and I would have liked the idea of what they did with Clara, just having her going around the universe, having adventures with the girl from the puddle.
But it's almost like, I'd like to say, like you say, like they did with Clara, it's almost like Moffat has done all of this before.
Yeah.
The one thing I think, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure if this is true. I don't think Twice Upon a Time was meant to be a Moffat Capaldi episode. I'm pretty sure Twice Upon a Time was meant to be I don't think this Christmas episode was meant to be as it was initially. I feel like this is filling a slot. I feel like Capaldi
This
was...
is a holdover until the next series.
Yeah, I think that Capaldi, in an ideal world, would have regenerated at the end of his previous episode. You know, when he sort of, that massive blast of energy and he wipes out the Cybermen. I think when he sits up, he would have sat up as the new Doctor.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as I would like to see more Capaldi, because I do like Capaldi, and much as I think he's great in this episode, that might have been better. Give him a proper send-off in the last thing, and because that's what they did with the Ninth Doctor.
Time.
This is, I mean, because with the Ninth, can you imagine if the first Christmas special of New Who, we were watching the Ninth Doctor for the whole thing, and then, actually, no, I take that because I'd like to see more Ninth Doctor. If there's one Doctor I'd like to see more of, it's the Ninth, and you couldn't even turn up for the 50th episode. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And yeah,
the thing is, this does feel like such a placeholder. You know, in the 50th anniversary, Moffat kind of ribbed Tennant for, you know, Rent Tennant's "I don't want to go."
Yeah,
but that was like a 5-10 minute sequence at the end of an episode where he was regenerating. In this, he gave Capaldi a whole episode, like a whole Christmas special of "I don't want to go."
Yeah, and here's the thing. With Tennant, you knew why he didn't want to go. He liked being this way, even though he knew it was bad, and he the 11th Doctor put it best when he said he had vanity issues, and that's what the 10th Doctor was. As great as he was vain. He didn't want to be anyone else. He liked being...
I mean, he looked great in a tux.
He looked great in a tux. But with Capaldi, with 12... I mean, you could come up with a reason why he didn't want to regenerate, but I don't remember that reason. I can't think of a reason why he wouldn't want to change. Is it because he's tired? Is it because...
It's been a season since the confession dial. I mean, that would have been the point at which he might say, "I don't want to regenerate. I've been broken by this experience." If you'd set that up then, that, you know, this doesn't really feel like a natural point. This just kind of feels like okay, now he has to go. And one thing I did like about the Cybermen, the two-part, is that the Cybermen are now the first villain to ever directly be responsible for the Doctor regenerating.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to think, and yeah, you're pretty.
He's never been got by a baddie before. It's always been something like tangentially related.
Bumped his head on the console or something.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the first time. Yeah. So far the Cybermen are winning. They've got one. You know, they've got tally one for the Cybermen in terms of actually getting the Doctor.
Yeah. Take that, Daleks. Scoreboard. Yeah. Scoreboard. Oh god, yeah. In fact, speaking of the Daleks, we meet them here because they pop it out of the spaceship, which is owned by these people called Testimony. Ooh. And because they're basically these Testimony people saying, this captain, this guy that you just met, he's got to die. And naturally, the Doctor is, you know, not too keen on that idea. So they escape and go to this planet Villengard, which I swear I've heard of before.
The banana grows of Villengard.
Yes! Oh, bananas are good!
Yep. Yeah, they used to exactly. Used to be weapons factories, yeah. Which, I don't know whether this is pre or post banana.
It's
growth.
in dire straits. It's not looking too good. The housing market
is not doing
great.
Bananas.
It's not looking good for anyone. And so they basically split up because they've got to find this database to find access, to find information on this testimony thing. That's basically what it is, just finding what testimony is.
And the fact that he goes there before... I mean, I guess he couldn't necessarily... I mean, the TARDIS is hooked up to the Matrix, which I'm pretty sure before they retconned it in this one, they went, yeah, the Matrix, that's just the most extensive database of all time. But in this one, he's like, no, I need to go and see, well, Rusty.
But who I forgot about Into the Dalek, just because it was such a weird episode. Well, it was an interesting episode. You know, we're shrinking them down, where that's classic sci-fi. But the storytelling that they chose to do it with, the ideas behind it were just so. Again, you would make a good Dalek, which is no. In fact, because the Ninth Doctor got that. The Ninth Doctor, the Ninth Doctor got you would make a good Dalek. The 12th Doctor got you are a good Dalek. And not only is that a rehash, it's not even getting what you're rehashing. It was so weird, and so I just blocked it from my mind. And then when he met that Dalek, I was like, are we supposed to know who that is? Have we met this Dalek before? Is this a special Dalek? Because all the Daleks look the same now, because they tried making them look all coordinated.
They tried the Dayglow Daleks, but
apparently that didn't work. Yeah. And then they mentioned, oh yeah, I travelled inside you, and it's like, oh yeah, the thing with that, the thing with that lady from Fresh Meat.
I travelled inside you. It was like, oh, at that point, I'm really hoping that's that Dalek.
Oh my!
There's a whole different adventure we just didn't see.
Oh god, I didn't even think of that. That's brilliant. Oh yeah, and the talks with the 12th Doctor before that, and this is again what we were saying about how he makes fun of him, like, oh, Mary Berry and stuff like that, and that's funny. When they actually sit down to talk, and there's this really interesting thing, which testimony shows the first Doctor, like, this is the Doctor of War, and it shows him all of his future generations. He didn't really become the Doctor of War until John Hurt, until at least, 9. So for the most part, the Doctor is just madcap guy running through Earth and space and time. And it was
that would have been quite a good line for Capaldi to be like, well, actually, you didn't get really wary until 8 or 9, until
look at the guy wearing the vegetable. He's fine.
Yeah. He played some cricket. He was quite,
Yeah.
Decorative vegetables.
Guy with
summer sports. It was all lovely.
Yeah. And we don't get that. And that's the thing. It's another thing to show the Doctor in this really dark aspect, which I like. I'm fine with, because there are dark aspects to him now. But that wasn't always the case. And I mean, like the 9th Doctor may well have put those two wires together and tried to destroy the Daleks. The 4th Doctor actually questioned it, like, is this the right thing to do? And it's only later that he's still finding this, questioning it, but it's after the fact, after the Time War. And, I mean, they give a throwaway line like, you missed out all the jokes, But, if you're going to, show this dark, troubling future for the First Doctor and have him respond to that, do it right. Get it in context, please. And then we get a couple of conversations with Bill and the Captain and stuff like that. And the Captain is basically, I mean, he's a nice character and all, but he is really one-dimensional. He is just there as a sort of semi-sacrificial lamb. He's like, oh, stiff upper lip, and I'm not a bad guy, and
somebody who's so noble and heroic that, is like, just basically twisting the knife in terms of, well, we can't put him back there to die, but we have to put him back there to die. And there was one line, I think the subtlest moment, and I think what has been mentioned in various other places, is the World War One, the First World War line, and he's like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean World War One?
But it's played for a joke. It's like, oops, sorry, spoilers. There's even going to be more bloodshed.
Yeah, it's like, oops, it doesn't all end here. Oh.
And that could have been a genuinely horrifying moment. Like, oh shit! Like,
this
really
is just going to keep on going.
But no, it's played for us, and it never gets mentioned again.
And I mean, do we want to talk a little bit about? I mean, I guess it's tied into what they actually end up doing with him, but who the Colonel is?
The Colonel.
I think he's called the Colonel. Is he the Colonel? I think he's a Colonel.
Do you mean the Brigadier?
Oh no, I mean the Mark Gatiss character.
Oh right. No, he's not called the Captain.
The Captain. That's it.
The Captain. He's not a Colonel. Colonel wouldn't be on the front lines. Come on, World War One.
That's. Oh, do you know the who played the German soldier in the bomb crater with him?
No, I don't.
Toby Whitehouse.
Toby White.
Who the creator, the showrunner of Being Human.
Really?
Yeah, I think he's written a couple of episodes of Who as well. He wrote. I think
Mark Gatiss was in Being Human at one point. I think I remember.
Yeah, he was one of the ancient Vampire Council.
Of course, because who else are you going to cast Mark Gatiss as?
Mr. Snow, I think he might have been called.
I don't remember Being Human beyond the second series or the first series. It started when they moved to Wales. I was like, I'm done. Fuck Wales.
when you're like, what is this, Gavin and Stacey? Come on now.
No. You can't have a werewolf and a vampire and a ghost in Barry, Wales.
I don't think. Obviously, sci-fi and Wales just don't mix. I mean, I can't imagine any popular sci-fi show, ever having anything to do with. I'm like, imagine trying to shoot one in Wales and produce one in Wales. That'd be
just
mad.
Imagine, and having mostly Welsh characters and a pterodactyl. We're talking about
Yeah.
torture now, and it's bringing up unpleasant memories.
But we're also talking about Doctor Who.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
In terms of
You were talking about Doctor Who. I was talking about Torchwood.
I have a soft spot for Torchwood.
Yeah.
I think Miracle Day was a mess.
Oh,
but
that's the unpleasant memories. The rest of, well, maybe not the first season, but the rest of Torchwood is great. I love
season 2 is great, and obviously Children of Earth is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And also, another Capaldi face that obviously never gets mentioned because they can't really reference Children of Earth in Doctor
Where
Who.
was he?
Because it's too just in terms of it's Frobisher. Capaldi played the
that's
the
another thing.
government.
He's been in Doctor Who twice before.
Yeah, and obviously it's not something they could ever mention because it is that horrific, and it is like, yeah, Doctor, we could really. And Miracle Day 2, we could really have used you on both of those because
they sort of explain it away like, I think there's times the Doctor is so ashamed of us. You know, I think he just wasn't aware, and he popped off to another planet, and then when he got back, it's like, what happened?
Of us. Like, I missed. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm tendenting it now. Like, I'm so sorry. I really dropped the ball on this one, guys.
Yeah. You know, there was a whole thing with another planet. I think I was drunk and I maybe got married. Who knows? But, so my bad. Sorry, I'll be here for the next time. Next time. If everyone in Earth suddenly stopped dying for some reason, I'll turn up there. No worries. He didn't. That's a conversation for another day. And what were we talking about with this?
The Brigadier. We're talking about
the captain.
And being presumably father or grandfather, and possibly father, probably father.
I think he's probably the grandfather, and Wikipedia says he's the grandfather. World War, the 60s. He could be either.
Yeah.
He could have a very young son or a son that's old enough to father the Brigadier. His full name, the captain, is Archibald Hamish Lethbridge Stewart. And as soon as they did that, I thought, okay, well, that's a kind of nice reference. And that, it sets up, it's not just a nice reference, though. It sets up the Doctor's continual interaction with the Brigadier and the extended Lethbridge Stewart family. With the first Doctor saying he'll check in on him from time to time.
I think the Brigadier is possibly the classic companion who's ended up being most important, at least in the last couple of years, to New Who, because Matt Smith. When Nicholas Courtney died, they obviously killed off the character in universe because they got that Matt Smith placing that phone call.
That was genuinely touching. Even though we don't see his death, even though Matt Smith never met him, it was touching, and we saw him. Nicholas Courtney in the Sarah Jane Adventures. He made a very welcome return to that. He was great in it. He got the uniform back on, and it was awesome. And it was like,
and he's there in I can't remember, Death in Heaven. He's there in that as one of the Cybermen.
Yeah, which was interesting way to sort of end his
pay homage. Yeah.
I mean, I think it didn't really work especially well, but it could have worked a lot worse. Yeah, it could have not worked entirely.
It wasn't actively offensive.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And he got a nice salute from the Doctor, which is a rare thing. And yeah, he is missed. And the Matt Smith thing was so touching because it really brought it. I think because Matt Smith's Doctor was such a madcap person, just jogging around space, having a good old time, and then he gets a phone call, that's saying that he places a phone call where he finds out that a good friend of his has died in a very peaceful but a very human way, and he's lost someone that was such a close connection to him, but he's not in a way that he lost Adric or he lost Clara, just in a very human way.
And I think partly that is that. I mean, the Doctor can always go back and visit him at an earlier point because there's nothing to stop that from happening. But yeah, there is a sense of like, okay, this is when the Brigadier dies. This is like the fixed point in time. That I might see him again. I've got that luxury. I've got a time machine. But anything that I do with every time I see him now will always be based around the knowledge that this is it. This is the point where he ends up, and I think and obviously Doctor Who. I mean, and especially in the Moffat era has dealt a lot with death. Yeah. Like and
not always especially well, but sometimes when they get it right, they really get it right.
And there's the thing about this, I don't think Twice Upon a Time dealt particularly well with the idea of death.
Yeah, because basically what it turns out Testimony is it turns out actually they're not some evil conspiracy type thing. They take people's memories right before they die, they shunt them back into their own time with no memories or knowledge, and try and make it as painless as possible. It just so happens something went wrong with the captain, and then they take these memories, they put them in these glass avatars, so these people can essentially live forever. And it's an interesting sort of idea, the idea that memories make up who we are, and that because these memories are brought back, that technically they're still alive, and it's that question, like, are we more than the sum total of our memories, or are we something else? And here's the thing. There's two problems with this. Number one, it essentially makes death meaningless. Every time we see a character from now on, we're going to think, oh, they're going to be a glass avatar. That's what I'm going to take away from it. And two, can these glass avatars make more memories? Can they have new experiences and learn from them and continue to grow and develop? And if they can, that is true immortality. If they can't, then it's a hollow reflection of these people. Will Bill Potts...
Wait a second. Are you saying that the Doctor might bring back a companion? The Doctor might bring back a companion who's recently been killed and make them immortal?
I wasn't. Now I am. Oh, jeez. It's
the Clara thing again. It is. One of the problems with Moffat, I think, is that back in the days of Eccleston in the two-parter, the Doctor Dances two-part, Untitled Chapter and Doctor Dances, just this once everybody lives meant something.
Yeah, because he had seen so much death, not just in his own incarnation, but throughout the Time War and beyond. He'd seen so much death, and you know what? Even though I was relatively new to that, I had seen so much death in that. I mean, Dalek, fucking hell, almost everyone dies in Dalek. And this time, everyone lives. And now, apparently he needed to bother.
Everybody lives, always and forever.
There are so many ramifications of this, so many consequences. And if they explained it, or went into further detail, maybe they could have made it work. Then, maybe they could have said, actually, no, they can't make any more memories. So it's not really the same, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not what we were thinking of. But no, it's like, it's a happy ending. Oh, here's Nardole, and I do miss Nardole. I actually like Nardole. Did you like Nardole?
I really like Nardole. I think
he was stupid when he first started. Yeah,
we started off very one note, and they weren't giving Matt Lucas very much to work with. But then they kind of subtly built up the idea of who this guy was.
He was great as a companion to 12 when he was just there and sort of being his conscious almost. And yeah, he's coming like, oh, I don't like this is scary sort of thing. But most of the time when he was serious, Matt Lucas, he's a good actor. He can do the serious stuff. And I thought it was really great because he had the idea of being the Doctor's conscience, which works so well on lots of other characters. And but he never stole the spotlight from Bill either. He had his own moments, but he just worked, and it was nice to see him again. But here's the thing, we already got a good send-off from him. He had a very touching goodbye with the last Doctor, and now he's back, and I guess he's dead.
He died at some point, and the fact that they all look like the Doctor remembers, which indicates I don't know what Nardole's aging process is, but I guess that's being very. Let's assume Nardole doesn't age like the rest of us, and therefore, when he eventually dies, he'll still look exactly the same.
Maybe. Yeah. That's another thing. If you die, do you look exactly like when you look like when you die? Is that the case?
And I'm going to throw out a spoiler for the end of Lost now. Anybody who...
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
But yeah, the idea that, these characters are being reunited after, different length... After, for some of them, an entire lifetime. And therefore it's like, oh yeah, I'm being reunited with you. Oh yeah, I remember you. I haven't seen you for like 50 years. And since then, I've got married and had kids and had a whole life. And now I'm getting drawn back. Like, Nardole could be like, oh, hey, the Doctor, how are you doing? I was around for 1 million years after I met you. It's nice to see you again, but it's a little bit weird getting dragged out of the box for this situation.
It's like seeing a friend from school that you haven't thought of for ages, and then suddenly you meet in the street, and it's like, oh, we've got nothing in common anymore.
Yeah, it's like I've had a whole range of experiences since I last met you, and the whole Clara was that. The Clara that got dragged out.
Oh yeah. Bill restores the Doctor's memories of Clara. Frankly, I'd forgotten that he'd forgotten about Clara. I didn't really need that. And I guess it was. I think what they were trying to do is they were trying to recreate that thing from Matt Smith's Departure, where he hallucinated Amy Pond, and that was really touching. Here, I don't give a fuck.
And also, yeah, you mean, and also that thing that, Moffat kind of made fun of when David Tennant did his goodbye tour.
What did he say?
Well, again, the whole "I don't want to go," and it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
you don't have to rake up everybody from the, you don't have to rake up everybody from the Doctor's past, everybody that incarnation has known, and then it's a little weird, just why not throw in, I don't know, Madame Vastra in there?
Oh yeah.
And because just like it's just. I like Madame Vastra. I wish we'd seen a bit more of Madame Vastra and Jenny and Strax.
The reason why David Tennant got that little goodbye tour, saying goodbye to Sarah Jane and Captain Jack, was because he'd been around for a while then, and he, as much as Eccleston started New Who, Tennant cemented it. He made it this phenomenon, this awesome thing. And, well, not just him, obviously, but it was his character that really grounded it and really set the ball going. And so he deserved that little goodbye talk because he met so many people, and with Capaldi and Smith and stuff. I mean, they're good characters. I do think that, but they aren't as important to the show as a whole. If that makes any sense. I'm trying not to downplay their impact, but at the same time, I'm talking about the massive impact that Tennant had.
Yeah, and I think the danger is that that they've now kind of enshrined it as a thing that this is probably, and no, maybe this is just Moffat. Maybe Chibnall, Chris Chibnall is taking over, is going to take an entirely different approach. But that's the thing, you can't. The danger is that we're making it every time he goes such an important event, and
there was a time when the Doctor regenerated. It was a very quick thing. Sick was over before he could blink.
Well, yeah, and the danger is that we've now mythologized this. To the point that you can't have a. I mean, how much how.
When 13 eventually regenerates, as she will, because obviously, if it was very quick and over and not much pomp and circumstance, we'll probably be kind of disappointed at this point.
Yeah, and that's and there's there are infinite opportunities for looking back and sort of and you can have another special where you bring back whoever. And all this stuff is interconnected. But yeah, the thing is, the regeneration has become such a big thing now.
Yeah.
And for better or worse, and I hope the show steps away from that. I hope the show is able to say, oh, look, okay, he's going to regenerate in this episode. And obviously that's the big thing in this episode. But, he or she, they are going to regenerate in this episode. And that would be a feature of this episode. But that will not be the entire purpose for the episode existing. It will not be about the Doctor. This episode will not be about the Doctor regenerating. It will not explicitly be about that.
Yeah, it's a factor in the story. But I mean, like the what was it? The Time of the Doctor, Matt Smith's Departure, was not about him regenerating. It was about Trenzalore and the Doctor, and even Clara to a certain extent, and it was a nice ending. It was a big dramatic ending, but that was not. It was not what the whole episode was building up to, which is that's just a way of. You're in real danger of disappointing people in that case. And before we get on to the regeneration, we have to talk about, we've been building it up, so the Doctor is not happy with the idea of the Captain being sent back in time to die where he's supposed to be, so he deliberately fucks with time just to save him. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad idea. I am saying that this is a fixed point in time and space where we know this person is supposed to die, and I don't want to say he's not important, because I think the Doctor would not be happy with that, but
that's the thing, like, either he is important, in which case you can't save him. It's just...
It feels to me like this is the sort of thing that the 10th Doctor would do in his darkest moments. In fact, he did. He saved someone in the waters of Mars that he wasn't supposed to save, and, a Time Lord Victorious is wrong. We've been through this again. This is the recurring theme of Moffat's.
And then just the casualness with which he does it. It's like,
yeah, he flicks one lever.
Yeah, it's like, I might have broken time, but it will figure itself out. And it's like, okay, on one hand, obviously they couldn't kill off the captain. That would be really, really dark. I mean, I don't know.
Couldn't
okay,
they?
Could they?
Yes, I think they could. If they were, you know what? They could have done if they were fucking brave enough. If they were brave enough to give this bittersweet, sad ending to this character that we haven't known for a long time, but we do like, and actually have the balls to kill him. And you know what? We would be sad about that. But maybe we're supposed to feel sad about that.
And it's almost like they could have gone, well, okay, the captain has to die, and then the captain can turn to the Doctor and say, if I have to die, you have to live.
Oh, so, yes, exactly. The idea that, you know what, sacrifices have to be made, and you don't have to be happy about that, but you know what, you can learn from this experience, and maybe, once in a while, death has a purpose, and there has to be a finality to something.
My sacrifice is I have to die, your sacrifice is you have to live.
Yeah, and maybe do away with the
and
whole glass hologram things.
Yeah, and that's...
And this brings us to the thing we mentioned earlier. The reason why he's able to save him is because he shifted time just a little bit. Don't know how he did that, but he shifted time. And it turns out he shifted him to about to die on like the cusp of the Christmas truce. And you hear the German soldiers sing Silent Night, Stille Nacht, whatever it is.
Stille Nacht, Stille Nacht, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the German's shoulder just hesitates, and that's what saves him. And all the German and British soldiers or whoever's there start, palling around and having football and stuff like that. And
that was a Cadbury's. Was that a Cadbury's ad?
It was an ad a few years ago. I think it was M&S or Sainsbury's. It wasn't Cadbury's.
Yeah.
But there was chocolate in it though. And frankly, when it was doing that, I thought it was manipulative. Here, I don't know if it's manipulative or not. Because it's a storytelling thing. You're allowed to do that. I think if you're trying to sell something and you're using, the
death of soldiers.
The death of soldiers, or a time when soldiers on opposite sides came together to celebrate peace and goodwill to all men. I think that's not on. But here, it feels like I'm being emotionally manipulative, not financially manipulated. And I don't know how to think. I think there was a way they could have done it that would have been much better. I think there's a way they could have done it where it would have been a lot worse. So here we're just in this sort of uncomfortable no man's land, funnily enough. And what was your take on it?
I saw what it was getting at, and I think, if you set something at Christmas, if you set a First World War, if you ever seen it, the First World War, and you're shooting something and it's on Christmas and it's a drama that's explicitly about Christmas, you kind of have to acknowledge the Christmas truce. And and if they were going to do that, that was always how he had to be saved. It had to be, if he was going to live, it had to be the Christmas truce. And if he wasn't going to live, then you couldn't do the Christmas truce, but you had to do the Christmas truce because you're doing World War I and it's Christmas.
It's Catch-22 Christmas edition.
Yeah. And I didn't have a big issue with it. It just didn't really hit me emotionally in the way that it was clearly meant to, and in the way that it should. It is a situation that is just inherently, again, it's about humanity. It's a point at which, two groups who were at war, or, were part of a broader system that was at war, sort of came together at a point.
They made a whole movie about this. I think it was called, what was it called? Noel? No, I can't remember.
Noel, yeah, I think that's, yeah.
And it was all about that, and how actually at the end of it they didn't really want to go back to war. They didn't want to go back to shooting each other after they just had a game of football. No one wants to do that, and it's just uncomfortable. It's not necessarily bad. It's just uncomfortable. And doesn't go into the full ramifications. And there's a moment where, like, the captain, who now lives, sees the Doctor and is like, "Do I remember you?" Because his mind's been wiped, and is like, "No, I'm just a guy in a weird suit in the middle of this battleground, having a cup of tea. Don't mind me." And if we haven't been talking a lot about the first Doctor, that's because, aside from David Bradley's performance, there's really not much.
There's not a lot to say.
No.
Yeah.
There was one interesting thing, which was talking about why he left Gallifrey in the first place. And it was like, he was talking about how he wanted to find out, what was it?
How good is able to stand up to evil when the fact that good is essentially not pragmatic.
Which is not the worst idea in the world, but let's be honest, they could have come up with something better. And there's one thing that's missing from this episode, which I was really hoping for at least a mention of, but we don't get it. Where the fuck's Susan? We do want to talk about it? Because the first Doctor, not too long ago, left Susan behind, and he said, one day I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back.
Until then,
and that whole speech, which was very well done by Hartnell and very well recreated by Bradley, but he looks at the 12th Doctor and says, okay, so where's Susan? Oh wait, no, he doesn't say that.
No, he doesn't.
So, you'd think he would mention his granddaughter, and talking about that, the Doctor of War, like, what would Susan think of this? Ah, Susan. And this is the thing, like...
And also the idea of loss, and the fact that, Capaldi's Doctor, one of the reasons he doesn't want to regenerate is because he has lost so much. So maybe just slipping in a line where the first Doctor goes, well, yeah, obviously Susan. And maybe, Capaldi's Doctor isn't even thinking about Susan, despite the fact she's ostensibly was his granddaughter, because it's been so long.
Yeah.
Like, Susan doesn't even register on the tally of people that, aren't around anymore.
Yeah, fucking Adric wishes he was Susan.
Oh, poor Adric.
Poor Adric, yeah. Now I'll never know if I was right. No, you won't. And it's I think the exemplary part of this this special is missed opportunities. They get a bit close, but they don't quite get far enough. They don't take the ideas far enough. They don't take the relationships far enough. For the most part, they come close. Sometimes they hit it, but it's just little tiny disappointments. It's the death of 1,000 cuts. And with the departure of 12, you've got to try harder. And
this leads on to talking about the departure of 12. I was not a fan of the regeneration scene.
I liked when we first see the 13th Doctor. It was the build-up that I...
You mean the part where, the Doctor sort of goes along and they kind of... One of my issues with this episode is it hammers home the idea of the 12th Doctor having this arc, having gone from the man, am I a good man, to now he's all about kindness and decency and all, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And we kind of got that swan song. We got that monologue in the previous episode. When he gives that speech to Master and Missy.
Yeah, and frankly, I always had an issue with that sort of idea and that sort of theme, that arc, because you're the fucking Doctor. Of course you're a good man. There was one time when you weren't a good man, the War Doctor, but even then, John Hurt's so damn likable, it's impossible not to think he's somewhat a good man. And it's like, am I a good man? Yes, you are. It's like a Jack Reacher who says, I'm not the hero. Yes, you fucking are, Jack Reacher. Yes, you fucking are.
Jack, if you're not the hero, can you point out who the hero is?
Is it Rosamund Pike?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where we're trying to make him really dark and anti-heroish, and no, this is not the right character for that. You can do that with fucking Wolverine and the Punisher. You can't do that with the Doctor, not in this way. And
essentially, so his final speech here, when he's like, always,
never,
always run, always be
never eat pears.
Yeah, not only felt like a reiteration of that to an extent, slightly redundant, but it also had the inadvertent effect, and it may well have been written before the next Doctor was cast. He does mansplain how to be the Doctor to the next Doctor.
Oh my god, I didn't even think of that. Oh shit, yeah. In fairness, he didn't know what was coming, but that is what happened. It's speaking of which, I think it's time we finally talk about 13. Jodie Whittaker. The Doctor's a woman, guys. Get used to it. And what I liked about her appearance was the shock, like, oh my god, I'm a lady, and then, oh brilliant, I'm a lady. But also,
I liked how the camera circled her. After Capaldi had first regenerated. Previously, they always show you the face. The face is the first thing they show you, and it's like, okay, the old actor's gone. Here's the new actor. But in this, the camera sort of circled and showed you her wearing sort of
The
Capaldi's
ring
clothes.
falls off. A ring that I
Yeah,
didn't even know he had. But yeah, he has a ring. And
Well, which is Peter Capaldi's wedding ring, designed to look like a piece of Gallifreyan jewellery so that he wouldn't have to take it off in character.
cool. And that was such a nice touch. That's a nice touch for Capaldi, and also a nice touch for 13. Just it slips off because the hand is a smaller size, and you see,
Awesome, yeah.
And the first line, they could have had a better first line, but it's a pretty decent first line. Oh, brilliant! Like that's all right. And
Oh, brilliant, in a broad Yorkshire accent.
in a broad York, I was wondering what accent she was going to use because Jodie Whittaker is from Yorkshire, and is she going to use that, or is she going to use something else like David
No,
Tennant?
well, that's the thing. I think David Tennant got a bit of a rough deal because I don't know I don't know how the decision was made that he had to go RP. Obviously, Matt Smith, who followed him, as RP, but now we've had both a Scottish and a Yorkshire doctor and a Northern doctor back to back. David Tennant must be like, oh come on, guys, you couldn't have let me just.
And the worst part is every time he had trouble saying words that ended with ood without reverting into his normal accent, so they came up with a character called the ood. That's just not fair. But we've got a Scottish doctor of Capaldi, which I'm very happy with. Oh, now I can get properly cross. That was a terrible impression of him, but still, pound in the bad impression box. And then it leads to something very interesting. The TARDIS suffers multiple failures because, that's another thing we'd seen this before, the TARDIS getting damaged. The TARDIS never used to get really damaged when the Doctor regenerated, but anyway.
It's because they never changed the design. So now it's like, new Doctor, new showrunner, new design for the TARDIS.
Well, that's the point. I'm looking forward to seeing a new design for the TARDIS. But because the TARDIS got so fucked up, she runs about and she's crashing again. This time, though, she fucking falls out of the TARDIS. She fucking falls out. She's pulling in the TARDIS. How'd she get about that?
Yep, shortest tenure of any Doctor.
I'm the new Doctor. Yay! Splat. I'm interested to see how they're going to get out of this one. I'm sure it'll be some sort of cop-out. I don't know. But fucking good cliffhanger, guys.
Yeah.
Props. This episode did not go great for me. At least not brilliant. That was a good way of ending it.
Yeah, the end of the final, God rest Capaldi. But everything involving Whittaker and the ending and her part of the regeneration and the cliffhanger were great. They were the best parts of the episode.
Yeah. Now, talking about Whittaker, I just want to talk people through. And I made comments before about how when I first saw the Doctor, this new Doctor 13, I didn't like the outfit, and I still think that's a really stupid criticism for me to have. It is the criticism I had, but that was a stupid criticism. I stand by it, though. But she's got the new outfit now. She's going to not look like she did in the first trailer where we saw her. But I want to talk both you and the Capers through my thought process when I found out the new Doctor was going to be a lady. And my first thought, I'm going to be honest with you, was a Time Lord can't turn into a lady. And let me explain this, because I have reasons. Stupid, geeky, pedantic reasons, but reasons nonetheless. Right, so my first thought was, okay, so Time Lords, they're this species that can regenerate and stuff, but they have different genders. We've seen that with, the Rani and Romana and people like that. So we have Time Ladies, and they are called a Time Lady. In fact, so we've got to get used to calling this new Doctor not a Time Lord, but a Time Lady. So if they have this idea of at least a binary gender sort of thing, maybe they're, not binary gender, a binary sex sort of thing, then surely if they could regenerate into a different sex, then they wouldn't have a concept of Time Ladies or Time Lords. They'd just be this people.
Unless they've become the Time Ladies and Time Lords, unless biological gender used to be a function of Gallifreyan
they evolved
civilization,
along with the space-time continuum, the time vortex sort of thing. That's how they
so that it's no longer relevant to them. So now it is just, you happen to be a man, you happen to be a woman. Obviously, regeneration, this isn't a fixed thing. And it's obvious, and it's something they did at the end of the previous season with the general character on Gallifrey, who gets shot and regenerates into a woman.
I didn't come about... here's the thing. I am totally on board with a female Doctor. And the reason why I am on board with a female Doctor is not because of that, but because I realised something about Time Lords that I didn't know before. Time Lords aren't a species. They're a civilization, and because I'm such a New Who person, not a very classic Who, I didn't know that. But I did some research because I thought, well, there must be some reason why Moffat and all the others think it's okay for Time Lords to regenerate to Time Ladies for them to switch sexes. Because there's a difference between sex and gender, we all know this. And so I did some research. It turns out the race is Gallifreyan. There are people from Gallifrey that aren't Time Lords, so it's a constructed society, an elitist hierarchical society. And in any society, they could have different concepts of sexes or genders. So yeah, the Doctor could be a lady. The Time Lords could change into Time Ladies and vice versa. It's entirely possible, because the reason why is because I thought if this people biologically had sort of grown up, if you will, with the idea of sort of evolving biologically with the idea of changing appearance, would they have any concept of sexes or gender? But if they're a society that, you know, is a constructed one, I don't know how the Time Lord society evolved or came about, but if they are just like a culture, then yeah, they could change their appearance while maintaining this idea of different sexes and different biology. So, in my weird brain, it made perfect sense. So that's my thought process. I'm not saying it made a lot of sense, but that's how I came about around the idea of a female Doctor. Because I was never... I thought, like, if it happens, you know, okay, I'll accept it, because I consider myself a feminist, and I thought I don't have a problem with a female Doctor. I just didn't know if it made sense within the law, and actually does make sense within the law, so there's really no issue. So if you're like a person who still is not on board with the idea of the Doctor, and that explanation didn't bring you on, then frankly, I have no time for you, and fuck you, sir.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. Having an issue with it because you don't think it makes sense in universe is far different from having an issue with it because, you know, oh god, things like, I know, TARDIS full of bras, and it's Doctor Who, not Nurse Who, and it's like that again, the perfectly Partridge line, the line that displays such a lack of self-awareness, and it's like,
and it's the thing that also happened when Bill Potts came around, and obviously Bill Potts is gay, and this whole idea of the classic, you know, Daily Mail correspondent, like, saying, oh, they're forcing all this political correctness stuff down our throats. Like, first of all, no, it's just the show, and it's reflecting the times, and you don't have to watch it, you know? And it's the same Doctor Who. I mean, fucking hell, if we can get used to a Doctor with, you know, hair gel and hair products in his hair, I think we can get used to a female, you know? I mean,
God, when they brought back Doctor Who, they brought him back with the regional accent.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and it's one of those. This is such a weird hill to die on.
Yeah.
Speaking that way, it's just like, why this? Why? And it's like, oh, you know, men are going, and even Peter Davison wasn't great about this, and like, you know, boys are going to lose a role model, and it's like
he said some stuff like they will change the relationship between him and the Doctor and the companions, and it's just like, if that's the best excuse it can come up with, like, it's really not an issue.
Because we already have, you know, cross-gender cosplay. Because, you know, girls already look to the male Doctor as a role model. Girls always. It's not just like,
because the Doctor's never been about being a man. It's never been about his gender.
The Doctor is an aspirational figure. The gender is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
But the fact that, you know, it's irrelevant in terms of the character, but it's, as you say, it's a good thing in terms of reflecting society that we are getting a female Doctor, and it's all about the actor. And I watched. Have you seen the film Adult Life Skills?
No.
It was one that Jodie Whittaker was in a couple of years ago, and watching that you know, a couple of years ago, far before, you know, her casting, I had the thought, here's somebody who'd make a good Doctor.
Yeah, and I also had an idea for like a Hayley Atwell from Agent Carter. I thought she might have made a good Doctor, and that's the thing. It opens so many doors, and I've always I want more female protagonists in movies and TV shows. I mean, I'm sure you could point to, oh, we got this and we got that, but I want more. And this is a great example of progression. And who knows, maybe the Doctor after her will also be a lady. Maybe she won't be white. Think about that.
Yeah, it's just, you know, the inevitable sense of like, oh, I'm not going to watch it anymore. It's like, then can I just suggest that you've missed the entire point of the show that you've been watching?
This happened before in Doctor Who, when Capaldi took on the role. A lot of fans didn't like the fact that this was an older Doctor, not as stereotypically handsome as Matt Smith or David Tennant. And it was like, oh, well, I'm not going to watch anymore. And it was like, okay, bye, you won't be missed.
It's like, yeah, can I suggest that in which case you've been watching it for the wrong reasons?
Yeah.
And sorry, that sounds very dismissive and very gatekeepery.
Yeah.
But it's like, look, if you want to see just young, if your only stipulation for this show was that it was going to provide you young, attractive men,
watch
and
Supernatural.
then it's no longer, there's no longer doing that. Yeah, watch something else. If that
The CW has 1,000,001 shows like that. This is not that.
Yeah, exactly. This is about something. And I have an incredibly romantic review of Doctor Who, and as I'm sure you do too. And sort of having, as I said earlier in the podcast, talking about why I think it's a show that has almost limitless capacity for the types of stories that it can tell, and the fact that the idea of regeneration, of reinventing itself, is so built into the concept that it would, after a certain point, it just becomes weird if it's not seizing that as an opportunity to do something new and to do something. And it's one of those things like, there are, if people aren't getting angry. I mean, have you guys reviewed The Last Jedi?
We on PodCapers, we reviewed The Last Jedi 2 episodes ago with Colin Coftree, and so what were you going to say?
It's part of my attitude, towards I thought The Last Jedi was great and is about as risk-taking and bold as the Star Wars franchise was ever going to be allowed to be. If a certain demographic aren't getting annoyed and angry about what you've done, you're probably not taking enough risks.
Yeah, probably. But the point is, Doctor Who will continue. It will continue with a Time Lady, and you know what? It's gonna be fucking awesome. I'm hoping. Because Chris Chibnall, what are your thoughts about Chris Chibnall taking over showrunner?
I'm not a big Broadchurch fan. I appreciate it, what it does. I don't think the episodes of Doctor Who he's written previously have necessarily been the best ones. But that's the thing. Moffat wrote episodes of Doctor Who before he was showrunning that were generally considered to be the quote unquote best ones. And I think that I love Matt Smith. Matt Smith is possibly, and I would never believe this, when somebody was taking over from David Tennant, that they would become my Doctor. I think it's partly because he wanders around like a dyspraxic giraffe and bouncing off things. I've got an innate.
Do we usually say yowza?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm comfortable that the BBC have given the job to the right person. That's the thing. And it's, again, like casting the Doctor, they haven't screwed it up yet.
No.
When I was talking, we were talking about favourite Doctors. The fact that I can say, that there is no Doctor I don't like. And there's no Doctor. In fact, I don't have a favourite Doctor because they are all unique and yet all the same person. And there are things to love and about each and every one of them. And
unless you're Peter Cushing, in which case that's just weird.
Poor Peter Cushing.
Hello, Doctor Who. His name isn't Doctor Who.
It's just it's like, is his surname Who? What's his first name? In which case, are we using, if we're constructing? Nope. You know what?
Rant for another day.
I am confident the BBC have chosen the right people to take over.
Yeah, I am too. I like Chris Chibnall. I like Broadchurch. So I am hopeful for the future. And it's still early days. We haven't even got a proper trailer for the series. I'm looking forward to it. When does the new series air?
Not until the autumn, I don't think.
Really? I would have thought it'd be around April.
Quite a long...
But
it has traditionally been, but no, I think we're getting quite a long period of downtime.
Well, because there's a lot of transfer of power and stuff like that. Chris Chibnall's got to get, back in the game and sort of thing, and sort of take over. So
was there an unusually long gap between Tennant and Smith?
Not that I remember.
Yeah, I guess it's just... Yeah, I guess it's been so heavily built around Moffat that in the last few years that kind of extricating him is
leave it, Stephen, leave it. You've still got Sherlock. Leave it.
Well, yes, quite. But no, despite my criticisms of Twice Upon a Time, I still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Because
that
it's
we
Doctor
got one
Who.
more hour.
Even if it's worst moments, it's still enjoyable.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we got a last hour of Capaldi, even if I didn't think it served a particular dramatic purpose, and David Bradley is a great first Doctor, more of Bill, more of Nardole, like all these things that I like, and that if I wasn't the type of person who nitpicks, it's a perfectly enjoyable hour of television, despite my reservations.
Yeah. We like to nitpick on this show, but it doesn't mean we don't love you. Unless you're Disney or DC, in which case we hate you. Well, I do anyway. And on that note, I think we're going to end the show. Thank you very much for joining me today, Rob.
Well, thank you very much for having me along, Scott.
It's been a pleasure having you. And if you enjoyed the show, please tell your friends, shout it from the rooftops. And if you haven't already, go back and listen to some of our other super episodes, like our Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 episode. How long ago was that?
That was a big chunk of time ago, and I remember I was being really quite nice about it.
Yeah, I remember quite liking it. And so you can listen to the show on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, or at PodCapers.com. We have a Patreon. Check out the rewards at patreon.com, AP2HYC. If you want to get in touch with us, suggest show topics, or maybe you want to come on the show yourself, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AP2HYC. Thank you very much to Dan Harris for our lovely logo, the microphone, and the red and blue 3D glasses. Those are mine. And thank you for listening. This has been PodCapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. Cue the music!